I don't know which weapons will be used in the Third World War, but we know that in the Fourth World War, stones and sticks will be used. Albert Einstein said these words 70 years ago, when he spoke about the dire effects of the Third World War. Armored vehicles, guided aircraft, intercontinental missiles, and other powerful weapons could destroy a major city like Washington. There are also lesser-known weapons with devastating consequences, and the world is on edge, fearing the possibility of a Third World War. Today, we're discussing the impact of a potential Third World War. I'm Zam, and this is Glossy Media.
Some of the more than 20 missiles launched from Iran into Iraq.
Christmas in 2020, just 6 nights after the world celebrated the New Year, was overshadowed by discussions of World War III on social media. For instance, following the assassination of Iranian leader Qasem Soleimani, hashtags related to the Third World War surged to 839,000 within a few hours. This widespread fear of an impending Third War is not to be taken lightly, considering the potential grim consequences it may bring to the world. If we reflect on the Second World War, during which over 70 million people perished, the weaponry of that era was just the beginning. The planes and tanks used in the war were newly developed and lacked the capacity to carry large quantities of powerful missiles. They struggled to remain airborne for extended periods, often resulting in crashes. Additionally, the firearms of that time were not as advanced as those of today. The most devastating weapons used during that period were the 2 nuclear bombs dropped on Japan. If you consider the power of those 2 nuclear weapons, comparing them to the nuclear weapons available today is like comparing a sword to a missile in terms of power and impact. So let's come back to the question. What is the meaning of a third war in this world? Every country in the world focuses on developing and building its army in order to defend its country, as well as to be able to conquer territory. This has made the countries of the world in constant competition and challenge, creating new war strategies. But in recent years, the challenge has become more formidable. It has reached a point where you think that weapons are not made to protect people, but to protect themselves from aliens from other planets. For example, some countries have thermobaric bombs. These bombs use the oxygen in the air to explode, and when they explode, their effects remain in the air for many years, killing anyone who breathes in that oxygen. Also, some countries have electronic warfare tanks. One tank can carry several missiles. These tanks are driverless and guided remotely. They have the ability to target several directions at once, and the missiles they carry are as powerful as the nuclear weapons used in the 2 cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These tanks have the ability to return to their starting point when they are attacked. Of course, we will not forget the big rockets that can cross several continents in a few minutes, as well as the big boats that carry hundreds of helicopters. There is also the terrible danger caused by hydrogen bombs, capable of melting mountains and rocks in a few minutes. As an example of the power of these bombs, in 2017, North Korea said it tested one of its hydrogen bombs, and that test caused an earthquake measuring 6.3 on the Richter scale. In 1954, the United States conducted a similar test, and it was 1,000 times more powerful than the nuclear bomb used in World War II. If a bomb had that power in 1954, what power will it have today in 2024? You can imagine the destruction and trouble that awaits this world if one of those bombs is used. This is the longest time in the world that no major wars have occurred, 79 years since there have been no major wars in the world, except for small wars between some countries. These cannot be compared to the previous wars in the world, where millions of civilians were killed. After that calm and peace for a long time, what will happen if there is a third big war? The reality is that if there is a third major war at this time, the impact it can have is divided into 3 types. First of all, the idea of using different types of destructive weapons, such as nuclear weapons and similar ones, will disappear, because today, there are 9 states that have nuclear weapons, with a total of 13,190 warheads, of which 3,750 are ready to be used. This means that if a country uses them, there are 8 other countries that will respond. It is something that no one can dare to do. If you are wondering why it was used in the Second World War, you are missing the context that at that time there were only 2 nuclear warheads in the world, and only the United States had them. If there had been another country with nuclear weapons, the US would have thought 1,000 times before rushing to do this brutal thing. So this war, if it happens, will be limited to economic and conventional weapons. As it happens now, the United States imposes sanctions on a large country like China and a strong military like Iran and North Korea, which have the ability to fight against those countries. If there is a military war, it is certain that the first people to be affected are the less powerful countries, which will be the ones to fight over. It also has an effect on countries that do not have natural resources and export all the basic materials, such as food and other things. All their wealth is useless because the ships that travel between countries and continents are stopped. If these countries survive the war missiles, they will die of hunger and thirst. Countries with natural resources, especially fuel and crude oil, will be affected if there is a third war, because there will be a gradual decrease in the exchange of fuel and its production. Fuel will become a scarce resource, causing major countries to compete for fuel to use for their planes and weapons of war. Therefore, if the countries that produce oil do not have the military power to defend themselves, they will be forced to surrender their oil and will be colonized by the countries that are fighting at that time. Finally, the emergence of a third war is a real possibility, considering the challenges that are increasing day by day in the world. But the only thing that stands in the way is the immense problem it could cause if there is a third world war, because we live in a world where countries with similar power but different politics are competing.